Hello, my name is Thomas. Welcome to British Culture. Albion never dies. This episode is a slice of Yorkshire and London life. I love doing topics by request. This topic was requested by my friend Sam, who you might know on Instagram as Bond Up North. He requested it over a lovely dinner which he had prepared and had a bit of a James Bond theme to it. If you're interested in James Bond meals especially, do check out his account on Instagram, Bond Up North, and subscribe to his newsletter there, which is available via Substack. But it will come straight to your inbox if you sign up for it. As I say, he gave me a lovely meal, suggested I should take a look at the news headlines from where I live again, and how could I say no? I absolutely love looking at the news headlines from local newspapers because I often feel they're far more representative of life in the UK than the frequent shock and horror, the big themes of national newspapers. They're often important news stories, however, they're very disconnected from our lives and incredibly London-centric. I have, of course, just been down to London for a whole series of James Bond events, and they were fantastic, but it's actually my first time down to London in 2025, and it is, of course, I'm recording this in October. So, the events that I went down to, just to cover it before I move on. First was a book launch, The Hook and the Eye by Raymond Benson, newly released. I was delighted, absolutely delighted to be invited to the Champagne book launch, speeches, champagne, great combination, to meet a number of fantastic James Bond authors, and his book, The Hook and the Eye, is all about James Bond's friend, Felix Leiter. Now, of course, in the films, Felix Leiter normally just turns up to help and moves on, but in the books, he's a far more interesting character. He loses an arm and a leg very early on in the series, and then becomes a private eye with a hook for a hand. He is a really interesting character, and I always find it interesting how in the James Bond novels, characters with visible disabilities, visible scars, including facial scars, are the heroes. James Bond, of course, has a scar on his face, whilst the villains are often all too perfect. My friend Pete Brooker said that villains often have very punchable faces. From the way that Fleming writes, that's how it feels, and I think that's quite accurate. But of course in the movies, it's the villains who have the scars on their faces or a hook for a hand. So I really like the literary approach. The Hook in the Eye is a kind of spin-off about Felix Leiter's adventures as a private eye in America in the 1950s. So I'll probably talk about that much more in a later episode, perhaps a later YouTube video. The next thing I went to see was a GoldenEye themed event at Sir Timothy Everest's tailor's shop. I've talked about Sir Timothy Everest before, in fact interviewing my friend Pete Brooker, because Timothy Everest's book, Boy Wanted on Savile Row, came out a little while ago, telling the life story of this tailor to the stars. People like Ralph Fiennes, Tom Cruise, and now David Zaritsky of the Bond Experience, who had a GoldenEye kind of inspired suit made. I was just hanging around just at the party, considering the post-party. My jaw hit the floor as Cat from Red Dwarf appeared, claiming his name is Danny John Jules. However, he is, for me, just Cat from Red Dwarf. If you haven't ever seen the TV show Red Dwarf, I do recommend at least checking out a couple of episodes, and then you might see why I was so shocked and delighted to see him. On Saturday, I had a great tour of Westminster with that one Bond guy and a group of Bond fans who were an absolute delight visiting the UK from overseas, and Sunday was the madness of the Cue the Music concert, a huge concert at Drury Lane, which had the special guests of the Three Moneypennies. I met the Three Moneypennies and attended the Q&A session with them. They are, of course, Samantha Bond, who was Pierce Brosnan's Moneypenny, Naomi Harris, Daniel Craig's Moneypenny, and Caroline Bliss, Timothy Dalton's Moneypenny. Just to sum up that event in a Q&A, Samantha Bond described her favourite scene to film as the one where Brosnan ripped her blouse open and kissed her. She claimed it took 3 hours to film. She did not recall what the title of the film was, which I found doubly amusing, as she actually read the audiobook of the novelisation in the UK. It's Die Another Day, 2002. That was the last of her 4 James Bond films. In real life, she very much reminded me of her character in the TV show Outnumbered, a sitcom that ran from 2007 to 2014. I found the show moderately amusing. I'm not sure if I'd recommend it to everyone. It is about children running rings around the adults in kind of on theme for UK comedy. You know, Basil Fawlty in Fawlty Towers is a dreadful hotelier. Alan Partridge, in a range of TV shows, radio productions and a film, Alan Partridge is a socially awkward chat show host. So we often have comedies about people kind of failing at what they ought to be good at. Not total failures, but people who just need to be better. And yeah, Outnumbered, the adults really ought to be better. The adults' lines are scripted by Andy Hamilton. The father is played by Hugh Dennis, who was the scientist in No Time to Die. I believe it was David Zaritsky of the Bond Experience who said that when he went to the premiere, he could kind of spot who was British, because when Hugh Dennis appeared on screen, all the Brits went, huh? And of course nobody else knew who he was. Hugh Dennis has also worked on a number of kind of topical news programmes in the UK. Mock the Week, one of them, but the Now Show, I think, was really his entry into that. And he talks about UK news. It's not very good for export, unlike, I think, Outnumbered. Oh, by the way, the adults' lines are scripted by Andy Hamilton and Outnumbered. The children were allowed to improvise. So when the grandma says, you know, remember, a woman can be any size or shape she wants, when the little girl says, how about a triangle? How about a hexagon? Those are most likely from the children. Anyway, Samantha Bond appears in that as a freewheeling aunt and is entertaining in it. So that's Pierce Brosnan's Moneypenny. Caroline Bliss, well, she stated she feels a bit shortchanged with only 2 007 films, one of which had no scenes with Mr. Bond, James Bond, Timothy Dalton at all, and in fact Timothy Dalton wasn't even in the same city. He was away filming elsewhere. She also remembered how the original Miss Moneypenny, Lois Maxwell, was in no way amused at being replaced and refused to give her blessing to the recast. On the other hand, I quite like Caroline Bliss's description of kind of the old school Eon production. So the producer, Cubby Broccoli, met her for dinner, cast her apparently on the basis that she seemed decent enough, and so she became part of the family for at least a few days. Naomi Harris, her experience seems the epitome of modern big-budget filmmaking, round after round of screen testing, auditions, total secrecy once cast. She was even reluctant to tell her family and her agent at one point. Months of training and in-depth discussions over scene motivation, character arc, and so on. Her favourite of her own themes was No Time to Die. I must admit, I think I would have preferred Caroline Bliss's experience to Naomi Harris's, but that's probably more a reflection of my very, very limited screen work in China. Anyway, I met the 3 ladies at this year's main Cue the Music concert pre-party held at the Waldorf Hotel. We were given food, but no Waldorf salad. Perhaps they had run out of Waldorfs. Referencing, of course, Fawlty Towers. So a great event with the 3 ladies there, and a great series of events attended by so many friends from near and far away. Over on the Bond Report YouTube channel, David Zaritsky and the host talk about being in London, the home of Bond. I really enjoyed that video, but like many Brits, I feel I am also a tourist in London. This Bond weekend, as I say, was my first time in London this year. The time before that was very, very, very much a flying visit, a quick trip down to All Bar Brown as they were launching the Man with the Golden Gun collection, I think last December. And before that, I really can't think. I don't often go. So there are a number of fans from overseas wishing they could visit London more often, but as a Brit, I only occasionally visit myself. Small cities, towns, villages. As far as I'm concerned, this is where the life of Britain really lies, and statistics back me up. The majority of Brits live in small cities and towns. I live in the small West Yorkshire town of Bingley, and my regular entertainment, I really can't recommend this highly enough, is the Facebook group of where I live. Everywhere I've been in the UK, there's a residents' Facebook group, and Bingley residents' Facebook group, like many of them, is highly entertaining. My favourite over the last few weeks was a post about a missing cat who is now no longer missing. I just love that. They posted that they'd found their cat. Someone shared a photo saying this was us at midnight on Monday night, having just seen a 3-hour-old answer by, they give a name, with a clear photo. Facebook, in its wisdom, hadn't seen fit to tell me about it upon release. Oh no, they had to wait 3 hours to see a post on Facebook. Anyway, they hightailed it up to Clyde Street near the gym, where somebody else had said that she might have heard her, armed with biscuits and a cat basket. They'd done similar so many times over the last 9 weeks, but as they made noises, including our car engine, Pip the cat came up the yard yelling something about food, but wasn't having any of that being taken home lark. It took us over an hour of crouching by the bushes, feeding her occasional biscuits. Anytime we tried to get her, she went deeper into the undergrowth, but eventually Pam managed to get hold of her and pop her in the car. There followed a delicate operation of getting us and all the kit in there without Pip getting out again. Food definitely helped, and she is now safe, home, looking a little, seriously, only a little thinner, but eating like she's making up for lost time. Obviously, quote, mahoosive, thanks to Ian and Becky, I'm happy to give the first names, but also thanks to everyone for all the suggestions, possible sightings, words of encouragement both here and meeting in real life. Found loads of neighbours we never knew existed. I really like how the community came together over a lost cat, and I particularly enjoy the coda to this post. So the person who originally posted ends it with, the next job is to take down all the posters. If you see one and have the inclination, feel free to remove it, as we put up so many. It'll be a load more walking to see them all down again. We will be working on it. And breathe. The lost cat has been found and the posters will be taken away. I love that. I love that they put up all the posters. I love that everyone was commenting. I love that they got so upset at 3 hours to see a Facebook post, but I understand it is time sensitive to find a cat, but I also love that they were going to go round and take down all the lost cat posters. If only everyone who put up all these various posters for events and needs took them down once the need was over, or at least shared it with everyone to give permission. So that's my favourite, as you might expect from a Facebook community group, a lost cat. But it's not all such high stakes. One of the posts that had quite a lot of comments was somebody asking for someone with long ladders who could secure this tile before the high winds on Saturday. And they've shared a photo of a tile maybe an inch over kind of a gutter on a roof. So yes, dangerous, it could fall down. Obviously if it hit you it wouldn't be funny, but yeah, loads and loads of comments on who has long ladders, people who are specialists in roofing repairs and gutter cleaning and so on. So I quite like that. A loose tile became a community talking point for a long afternoon. Now I know that some people listening have their image of English village life from the movie Hot Fuzz with Simon Pegg and Timothy Dalton, funnily enough. And of course, one of the plot lines in that is a goose on the loose. Now, of course, we can tell the standard of Bingley, because we don't have a goose on the loose. Well, we have a couple who terrorise people as they walk along the canal, but we have a swan on the loose. There was a swan on the main bypass, loads and loads of traffic, all halted, police were called, and yeah, police had to remove the swan from the highway. So there we go. Hot Fuzz, moderately accurate, a swan, not a goose. Somebody commented, seeing the swans as cygnets this year, they've now grown to be as big as their parents. I'm concerned I've only seen one parent for a few days and hope nothing happened to them. So lots and lots of conversation. The swans are fine. One lady posted that she rescued one of the babies from behind a temporary wire fence below Three Wise Locks today. Well, Actually, I didn't. Two lovely gentlemen did after my dog spotted it. So I quite like the credit she's taking, and then, giving credit where credit's due to the two lovely gentlemen unnamed. Now, obviously it's not all swans and lost cats. Occasionally there are actual crimes in Bingley. Police, by the way, are in this Facebook community group, as they are in many, many Facebook community groups in smaller towns and villages across the UK. Officers from Shipley Neighbourhood Policing Team are currently assisting at the scene of a cannabis farm located in a commercial premises on Main Street. Around 4:30 a.m. this morning, officers from the Roads Policing Unit managed to pull over a vehicle that had initially failed to stop for them. A search of the vehicle revealed a large quantity of cannabis. Further inquiries led to the discovery of the cannabis farm, which contained 350 plus plants. So far, 2 people have been arrested. It names the policeman, gives the police number, the individual policeman's number, and a telephone number if you have more information. I quite like most of the comments on this post with people saying, I'm pleased to hear they've been caught, but one person complaining, the plants don't look very healthy. Well, yes indeed, good to hear from the local gardening group. And there are a few bits of antisocial behaviour. A quad bike, for example, has been seized after riders stuck their fingers up at police. So, this is from the local Telegraph and Argus newspaper. Quad bike has been seized after 2 people on it beeped their horn and stuck their fingers up at police. So the West Yorkshire Police said its community alert website, that officers driving on Rye Lane in Halifax, good, far away from where I am, at least a few miles, they had spotted an illegal quad bike riding on the pavement. Oh dear. The Post added, the 2 males on the quad thought it would be wise to beat their horn and stick their fingers up towards officers. The quad bike's riders soon lost their vehicle, with police saying their riding skill was just as poor as their decision making. So officers have seized the quad bike, and a spokesperson for West Yorkshire Police said no arrests have been made at this time. Presumably a good telling off. Sticking with the real news stories, a Cadbury chocolate discontinued in 2002 has returned to B&M stores across the UK. I didn't live in the UK in 2002, and in fact I'd never heard of this chocolate. It's the confectionery company, which I have heard of, is responsible for a wide range of popular chocolates in the UK, including Time Out, I know that one, Flake, yep, I know that one, James Bond ate that as a child according to the novel on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Double Decker, Crunchy, Freddo, Classic Dairy Milk. However, there are several discontinued Cadbury chocolates which used to be part of the company's UK range, including Top Deck, never heard of it, Crispello, never heard of it, Dairy Milk Bubbly, I can imagine it, but never heard of it. These were discontinued by Cadbury 23 years ago, but have made a return to stores in the UK, essentially, skipping through the article, because B&M seems to be importing its chocolate boxes from Australia.
My name is Sherry Hazard, and this is the Folium Diary. In this diary, I will be recording my impressions of a new program called the Folium. This new app will bring the benefits of Earth's collective wisdom to everyone, everywhere, all the time. If that sounds wildly ambitious, utopian, and, let's face it, kind of crazy, join the club. I will be posting a new page every evening at 9 o'clock. What could possibly go wrong?
Where they are still sold. So if you are listening in Australia and you know the chocolate bar Top Deck, do let me know if this is one of your favourites. As I said, local news stories often have things that are very, very relatable, maybe people you know, and I quite like that Ermisted's is celebrating the 100th birthday of a former secretary at the local grammar school. Eileen Gracie has, she's celebrated her 100th birthday. Not national news, but if you were living in Ermisted, then absolutely everybody would know it, especially, I would say, as she was a school secretary from 1969 to 1991. She, of course, received a telegram from the King and Queen, King Charles and Queen Camilla, and celebrated her birthday with a family party, and was invited back to her old workplace for an afternoon of reminiscing, as well as a cuppa and a slice of cake. I think that's fantastic. I really, really like that she was invited back to her old office, although I wonder how many of the old offices I've worked at that I'd be delighted to return to if I was 100 years old. As I said, not all the local news stories are happy. There's been one piece of local news in Bingley that was even reported in a national newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, giving a shock to a few local residents, which was that the bowling club in Bingley is considering folding due to vandalism. There's a historic bowling club, or bowls club. It's Crown Green Bowls rather than bowling lanes. So there's a Crown Green Bowls club in the Bradford district, as the Telegraph referred to it. It's considering folding after more than 100 years due to, quote, little Egypts persistently vandalising the premises. In fact, this is one I do have a connection to. I go past this Crown Green Bowl kind of park on a regular occasion. I know people who do play there, and one chap who did actually ask the kids who are kind of tearing it up on their bikes, they're tearing up the grass, and a friend asked, why are you doing that? And the kids just shrugged and said, they're bored, there's nothing for kids to do. Kids didn't used to tear up Crown Green Bowls, it's been fine for 100 years, but on the other hand, right next to it, literally a stone's throw away, there used to be a swimming pool, and that swimming pool had been open for decades and decades and decades and decades. So that's another local closure. It's been closed since 2020 and has become probably the biggest talking point of Bingley. Again, this has been reported in the national news, the BBC, which reported campaigners fighting to reopen their local swimming pool has set out a list of proposals aimed at bringing back the facility. Now, Bingley Pool had been in line for a portion of £14 million in levelling up funding under the previous Conservative government, but the new incoming Labour government confirmed that Bingley's bid had been rejected by them. They cancelled a range of projects coming in. So there is an organisation called the Friends of Bingley Pool, and they're now proposing that a community organisation, such as their own, should take on an initial 5-year lease of the building to prevent it from being sold off. So yeah, Bingley Pool was closed in 2020 during the COVID pandemic and was simply never reopened. It was always eking along. It always had kind of minimal maintenance, but that year missing maintenance of any real kind really has done it a lot of damage. Now, this does connect to a national news story. So the GMB is a general trade union in the UK. GMB initially standing for General Municipal and Boilermakers Union. It's just known as the acronym now. They've stated that children and young people are at risk of drowning because of the, quote, terrifying numbers of swimming pools that have closed. In fact, a study indicates that 500 public pools have closed since 2010, with almost half shutting since the COVID pandemic. And there's a coalition of interest groups, including the local government association and the GMB, is calling for renewed funding. A report from the coalition said 30% of children in Year 7 could not swim 25 metres confidently, which was up from 27% in 2017 and 18. That's a very large number of kids who can't swim for an island nation. So, on the Friends of Bingley Pool Facebook page, it's claimed that 13 schools in the local area have been left without a swimming pool when Bingley Pool closed its doors in 2020. Schools do have a statutory obligation to teach swimming and water safety to all pupils during Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2, but many are struggling to fit swimming into their curriculum as it's time-consuming to get them to the nearby towns and cities which have them. It's also expensive for already stretched school budgets to get the buses to go there and to get the swimming lessons scheduled. It's very, very difficult to get those time slots as there's just so much demand from 3 towns and all their districts for a decreasing number of swimming pools. Now, there is a Bingley Pool, Friends of Bingley Pool official website, and I think it's worth reading out the quick article there by Jeremy Thackeray, put there on March 19th, 2025. Not much has updated since then, so it's still quite relevant. This time last year, we were celebrating the provisional award of a £14.4 million Levelling Up Fund grant for the renovation of Bingley Pool. In a general election year, we knew that nothing was certain, but we put all our efforts into securing the grant. After the election, in the new government's budget, the funding was frozen. We have now learned that the funding has been formally withdrawn. What next for Bingley Pool? Before this funding, the land and building were on Bradford Council's list of assets for disposal. We are meeting with Bradford later this month to find out their intentions, but now that capital funding is gone, we expect Bingley Pool to go back on the disposal list. We have one backstop. Bingley Town Council has agreed that in the event of the building going up for sale, they will activate its Asset of Community Value status. This will pause the sale for 6 months to allow for a community bid. Our intention is to put together a business case convincing Bradford Council to either run a public-private procurement exercise from the building's regeneration or to hand over the building to us for management. We may even consider capital fundraising to purchase the site. To achieve this, the Friends of Bingley Pool will have to change how we operate. We are transitioning again away from lobbying those who hold the power and the purse strings and towards being a group that can potentially renovate and run the facility ourselves, as we were back before the pool's closure in 2020. It will take imagination, hard work and good fortune. It's tempting to think of last year as a wasted one spent on a wild goose chase after national political issues. Instead, it's useful to think of it as having taught us a lesson. If the people of Bingley want to get a pool back, we will likely have to do it ourselves. If you have any ideas of how you can help, particularly around business planning and estate services, i.e. building inspections, feasibility studies, etc., please get in touch. You can expect to hear more from Friends of Bingley Pool following our upcoming meetings in March and April with Bingley Town Council, Bradford City Council and Anna Dixon MP. I like that last bit where they acknowledge the 3 levels of local government: Bingley Town Council, Bradford City Council and a Member of Parliament. 3 different levels, and they're trying to get them all lined up to get this swimming pool working. So, those meetings have been had, and I've been hearing from people who've either been to them or have trusted friends who've been to them, and it is an ongoing, not a huge amount of movement. It takes a long time to get things done in local government, but it's good to hear that the local community is trying. And there is a local petition signed by over 7,000 people saying, basically, keep the Bingley Pool. I shall end with the most controversial topic in the place where I live, which is the Bingley McDonald's. So there's an area of land also currently with nothing on it being sold off by the council, and McDonald's have put in a bid to build a new McDonald's there, and it's caused a huge amount of controversy. One councillor has questioned whether there would be so much opposition had they been a Betty's Tea Room rather than a McDonald's. But anyway, an application to build a McDonald's drive-through on the former Bingley police station was refused at this initial stage by Bradford Council Planning panel on Wednesday after members heard hundreds of people had objected to the proposals. There was a lengthy debate. Bradford District Planning Council ignored advice from planning officers and refused the plans due to highways and parking concerns. So this is where it's important about the local levels. You have Bingley Town Council and then you have Bradford City Council. At the moment they are in disagreement. But members were warned that the council may struggle to defend any refusal if McDonald's appeals the decision. We're just at this initial stage, and a successful appeal by the company would land taxpayers with a hefty bill. Now, the planning application for the long-empty Bradford Road site was submitted last year. The global food giant said a 96-seat, 2-storey branch would employ 70 full-time staff and involve a huge investment in the town. 400 people had written in support of the plans, 500 people had objected, and the objections raised for concerns over traffic and parking to public health fears that McDonald's would encourage unhealthy eating in the town. There's also been questions over the restaurant's 24-hour opening time, but planning officers told the panel that McDonald's had agreed to reduce operating hours to 6 a.m. to midnight in light of those concerns. One debate during the meeting was whether the business would be classified as a takeaway. Current council policies prevent takeaways from operating within 400 metres of a school or park, unless it's based in a city, town or village centre. But planning officers pointed out with over 90 seats, the business would be classified as a restaurant rather than a takeaway. This, I have to say, is something I find very, very interesting. All the local rules and all the local interests that go into something that may seem, on the outside, relatively simple. Of course, if it was in another town or another city, I would find it desperately simple and obvious. But being where I live, it is, of course, highly, highly complex. One objector, Mr. Marshall, saying these are genuine concerns, not just NIMBYism, not in my backyard-ism. Should we bring an extra 1,000 vehicles a day into the town centre when we've struggled to get rid of traffic in the past? One town councillor referred to the concerns over unhealthy food. David Hesseltine pointed out that salads are unlikely to make up a major proportion of McDonald's sales. Another panel member, Paul Sullivan, described planned a suggestion the application could be approved as appalling, and again raised concerns about obesity. And another said, this one, Mohammed Amran, saying we're trying to improve the health of young people in the area. It might be a restaurant, but a lot of people will take food away, etc., etc. I'm skipping along to my favourite objection. Committee Councillor Sinead Engel. It seems to me like a large proportion of the objections are because this is a McDonald's. If this was a Betty's tea room, which serves foods that is equally bad for you and also does takeaway, I don't think we'd have as many objections. So 5 members had refused the application, with 3 voting for approval. 2 members abstained from voting, so the appeal continues. And I say, I really, really enjoy this kind of deep discussion over something that may seem relatively small from the outside, but of course does affect people's day-to-day lives. Obesity, childhood obesity, is of course a serious issue. Of course, it could be helped enormously if there was a local swimming pool that children could go to. And of course, with regards to the anti-social behaviour that children are doing because they're bored, well, there did used to be a police station, funnily enough, on this now bare patch of land. Anyway, that is all I have to say about life in this little West Yorkshire town. I hope you found it as engaging as I do, particularly because I feel these kind of stories really do represent people's day-to-day lives in the UK. As I say, far more than anything in the nation. I was also happy to give a bit of a summary of my time in London, because again, I feel I experience London like the majority of Brits. I go, I see it, and I get out. I'm very, very happy to be back in Yorkshire. Have a lovely week.